Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, folks, we're going to jump into talking a little bit about, I guess you could say, the essence of transformation that drives us to convert the intangible to tangible. Our organizations and all of culture are driven by these unseen forces, right? Concepts, behaviors, uh, things that, like fear, clarity, trust, right? So many of these concepts that are often behaviors, but also values, right? These things are the invisible forces, and there's a litany of those. But these unseen forces really are they affect the tangible outcomes within organizations and the broader culture. Not only those, but also our personal and professional lives, right? Because everything is connected. So if you think about it, what are just some examples where we might be able to convert uh, the intangible to the tangible? You think about things like trust, and oftentimes I'll use kind of, examples with raising my kids and that sort of thing. They're all grown now, but trust, right? You think about it when the kids were young. Hey, when you get home from school, mow the yard. Depending on the age that they were, as long as they were safe to do that alone, right? Or with their siblings, that, hey, when you get home, mow the yard. And then you notice when they're young to what level you can trust that they actually will do that. And that's typically why it's proven out, right? So trust becomes a thing that becomes a little bit of a proof. Where's the proof that I can trust you? When we're talking about our professional lives, we think about our career. And when we've been given responsibilities, have we been able to do things? Could our supervisors and leaders within the organization trust us to accomplish the tasks assigned and so on and so forth, right? And as we've developed, those tasks and those responsibilities grew and grow more and more, right? And those same things grow right into the broader culture. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the organization that you happen to work in or own or run or lead, or if it's the community, right? Organizations within the community, same thing. And so this is where oftentimes you see people will get, and there are folks out there who will kind of poo-poo the, well, status and role and title. Sure, title, role, status, yes. On the face of it, those things don't mean much, but it is what's underneath that. So if somebody's a supervisor, they've quite obviously proven that they can be trusted, right, to accomplish tasks, assign tasks, and so on and so forth. And that progression just continues onward, right? Now, is it foolproof? No, right? And there are people, just like all humans, that have failed along the way, and failure is a part of the equation. So, it isn't necessarily a 1 and 0 here, but it is hopefully more ones than zeros, right? So, trust. Can we trust? When I left, say, if it was my son, hey, when you get home from school, mow the yard. At a certain level, I could trust that he could accomplish certain things, right? Now, everyone can surprise you, right? But but in general, that's what we're talking about. Trust is one of those things that becomes proven over time. When given these assigned responsibilities, a person carry that forward, and can they come through, right? And so trust is a big thing. Now, that isn't just big ticket items. That could be subtle things, right? Can I trust that you're going to lock up? Can I trust that you're going to close the front gate? Can I trust that you're going to, if you're a significant other, can I trust that you're going to put gas in the car and not leave me on empty for the next day? right? There's some real subtlety things like that that will find their way into even our own personal domestic lives, right? And we can fall short, right? And we have to own it when we do. And what happens then? We have to try to earn that trust back by our allowing ourselves, or I should say, motivating ourselves to stay on top of things that we say we're going to do when we're going to do them, or certain things that we should do when we should do them, right? So trust is one of those that obviously is kind of a little bit unique, but it is an intangible, right? But the proof is that when there is trust, right? When I can trust someone to do something, or if they can trust me, then what? Then the result is a certain outcome, right? Hopefully a good one. Another one is clarity. We might say, well, clarity, that's, sounds like a vague, you know, thing. Well, if you think about it, clarity, when do we want clarity? Usually we want clarity in our communication, right? Hey, I need you to bring, you can use domestic examples, or you can use ones at work. But hey, I need you to, feed the dogs at 5 o'clock, right? That's specific, right? Maybe not specific enough if they aren't my dogs, though, right? So if I'm if a friend or a neighbor or a relative, they say, "Hey, I need you to feed the dogs at 5 o'clock." I need more clarity on what is required, right? Where's the dog food at, et cetera. Some more detail. If I'm the significant other in that home, then that's, less clarity is required. So oftentimes clarity can be situational, right? And we can't assume with clarity. And so when we look at clarity, for example, as I'm going to say nebulous, but when we think of it as a intangible, how do we make it tangible, and what's the outcome? The outcome is when I'm specific, right? When I give clear guidance and instruction that people can achieve what they set out to achieve based on that instruction or that communication, right? Emails, things fall through the crack big time on emails. Not just emails, but it can fall through the cracks on emails or texts, right? Who hasn't, sent a text that could have been interpreted 3 or 4 different ways, right? Or an email for that matter. So those are things where clarity is king, right? Clarity is king, because clarity is going to make sure what? It's kind of like the guide rails on a road. If I'm clear, then I'm going to, make sure that it doesn't take me off into the weeds, off into the dirt road, or get lost in the woods, right? It's going to keep me on track. Think of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, right? Clear, follow the yellow brick road. That's clear, right? To get to Oz, right? So anytime she veered off the yellow brick road, she wasn't exactly following the guidance, right? Which makes for a good story. And oftentimes it's kind of our story. If you think about it, it's definitely a metaphor. Accountability. Okay, so there's another one. Accountability. Wow, pulling out the 13-cent words, but that's okay, or 25-cent words. That's okay. Accountability, for an intangible expectation of value, right? Also behavior, right? But accountability. When we have accountability, what can that look like if we can turn that intangible concept into a tangible outcome, right? Then we know that people are what? They're going to own that thing. So imagine, now I go back to my son mowing the yard just for a simple example, right? It's one thing that I can trust that he can accomplish it. It's another thing if I know he's accountable, that he has ownership of it, right? So it's not just that he's going to just run through it, mow it, leave the lawnmower parked off the other, on the side of the house, and maybe it doesn't pick up some debris, whatever. He's going to tackle this. He's going to own that yard, essentially, right? The work surrounding that effort, right? In the same way, accountability. Are we being accountable? We have to ask ourselves, are we being accountable? If we're being accountable, aren't we also showing up right? We're on time, we're showing up, we're accountable to our team, right? We're accountable to our customer, we're accountable to everyone, because everyone is our customer essentially, right? But are we being accountable? So we have to ask ourselves, do we have that ownership? And does that ownership stop at the door, right? Uh, the accountability you have, say, in an organization or at work, does it stop when you leave work, right? Or is that accountability something that follows you, right? This is how you know, and this is another one that I wasn't really going to get into in depth, but integrity. This is how you know integrity is there, is when that accountability follows you. I don't mean follows you home to, split up your family time and to not allow you to have segregate work from rest. But I am saying that there's an integrity to the ownership concept, right? So accountability is significant. Taking ownership, even if nobody is asking you to or expecting you to, is it part of your operating system, right? Accountability, this is another one too, where you can go through school. I mean, look, folks, I know folks who don't have a degree, who were raised by parents who gave them a PhD in being a good human, right? And they're some of the most fantastic workers you will ever find. I don't mean just workers, leaders, all of it, all of it. And I know folks who have gone through and gotten their degree, and other people paid for it, and some who paid for it themselves. That they don't have that same ownership, right? They don't have that accountability. Accountability isn't there necessarily. So this isn't a marker, right, that is just tied to your resume or your title or your degree or a particular certificate of achievement, right? If you have a doctor, right, they have a title, they have responsibility, right? At least we hope so, right? But are they accountable, right? So you think about it, and we can take this into all arenas. Would we even have insurance if there was a full accountability? No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't have it. Insurance is society's commentary, on itself about accountability, right? So think about that one. Let that marinate for a minute. Anyway, we want to be accountable. The other one is respect. Respect is so huge. It doesn't matter where we are in life. Respect all across the board. Kind of that unseen driver, right? There are folks that you can tell by interaction when some folks have respect for other folks, and those who don't have respect for other folks, right? You can see it in disdain. You can see it in their body language. You can see this also show up a little bit in absenteeism as well, not just where accountability was, but also respect. If you respect the team, do you show up? You think of sports, right? I think of growing up and coaching, is that you have respect for your teammates when you show up, right? You show up and you give your effort. Respect isn't just about like, well, I respect what that you're doing what you need to do. That's not respect, right? Okay, respect is showing up for your team, giving your best for your team. Why is that? Because it affects the customer. And ultimately, it trickles beyond the work site. It trickles right into our homes. It trickles right into our civic organizations. It trickles right into your churches. It trickles right into everywhere, right? And it reflects us as human beings. So if we don't have respect, even for those we disagree with, I can disagree with you, but still have a modicum of respect for you. What is the main thing that turns that respect dial down the quickest? When somebody doesn't have respect for others. So what you will find is if person A doesn't have respect for person B, person C will see person A and go, and now they don't have respect for them, so it becomes a chain reaction. Now you think of that chain reaction within your organization, and you can go, oh yeah, I have seen that. You can think of it in school. You can think of it everywhere in culture, essentially. You can think of it in politics for sure, and definitely in faiths and belief systems too, right? When there becomes you can say a de-evolution of respect, then despite differences of opinion, when the respect starts to leave, the chain reaction becomes one that sets us back. And this is, again, part of these invisible forces. Do you think people are going to be more likely, more absent, more likely? Do you think your turnover is going to be higher or lower? It's going to be higher. Results are going to be worse. When all of these are lower or not present, then the result is higher turnover, less productivity, poor quality, right? And the list goes on. So it's so important that we think about the intangibles that are driving the organization. In the book, I list, I've got a couple pages of behaviors, both some good ones and negative ones, right? Just as little thought provoking lists, if you will, for you to be able to go, oh, yeah. So you can kind of internalize and reflect upon when you've seen that potentially in yourself, during your development stages. And maybe you're struggling with some now. Just depends. Another one is purpose and meaning. So this one's a little bit difficult because if you think about it, where do folks get purpose and meaning at work? Well, I mean, you think about it. They come in, they're just, hey, go, do the work, oftentimes. Purpose and meaning really is that you're on board, that everybody is really on board with the same vision, right? And that you have the same goals and the objectives, and that why you have those, but why are you doing those? Do you have a passion for that, right? Turning that intangible of purpose, right? The intangible of maybe not knowing what it is, but then establishing what it is. And this is great conversation for your organizations and your teams to get together to say, hey, what's your purpose? What gives you meaning here in our organization? Because it may be that it's kind of falls in line with your stated vision and all these things, but what do they feel professionally about it and personally? I mean, hey, why not? It may be that the purposes, if their purpose is aligned with their purpose, right? It's like, well, hey, I really like the products we make because they do this for our customers and they make, XYZ customers more safe. And I know that gives me peace of mind because I want my family to be safe and I want their families to be safe too, right? Just an example. But if the purpose, if there's power in the purpose, if the why they're there doing the work, if that purpose is strong in, titanium, basically, and there may be variations to that, but there may be similarities. But if the purpose is essentially revolving within the same sphere for your entire team, oh my gosh, you won't be able to stop your team if you can convert that intangible to a tangible. That one alone can help to convert all the other intangibles to a tangible. All right, folks, I don't want this video to go too long. Remember, within your organization, really helps to do your, to do your meetings or your, I'd say, roundtable discussions, etc., team trainings and so forth, and really talk about some of these intangible things, because you might find where some folks aren't really on board, or maybe they're a little sour about some of this stuff, or half the team is and the other half isn't, or maybe you have a few outliers, and that's okay. It's not about singling out the outliers. It's about understanding and going, hey, well, this is really our motivation, and perhaps some of the outliers or newcomers, because remember, this is about onboarding too. The newcomers hear some of the inspired, positions and perspectives of some of the veterans in your organization. They can be inspired as well and see how those dots connect for them in their own life, not just within your organization, but in all of culture. All right, folks, hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only are we helping to transform culture, but we're transforming ourselves. But remember, we can't transform anything on the outside until we're willing to transform on the inside. All right, folks, hit like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, I'll talk to you later.